My beloved child, there are moments in life that do not arrive with dramatic events or obvious upheaval, yet they carry the full weight of a turning point. They are not loud, not forceful, not frightening at first glance. Instead, they come quietly, gently, like a subtle pause in the familiar flow of days. You still wake up, still work, still care for those around you, but deep within, something no longer aligns. Not because you are weak, and not because your faith is lacking, but because your soul has begun to recognize this truth. If you continue walking the same way, you will slowly lose yourself. That is the moment when I call you, not with thunder, not with overwhelming commands, but with an invitation to stop, a pause so delicate, so fragile, that the hurried will pass it by, yet so clear that those who listen will recognize it. I do not come to frighten you. I come to awaken you from a state of survival you have lived in for far too long, a place where each day is spent simply trying to keep everything from falling apart. You have grown accustomed to bracing yourself so tightly that it began to feel normal. You told yourself that if you just tried a little harder, endured a little longer, everything would eventually be fine. But, my beloved child, there are wounds that cannot be healed by effort alone. They are healed only by returning. You have been living at a pace where your attention is stretched in every direction. News, responsibilities, worries about health, strained relationships, unanswered questions, bills arriving sooner than expected, difficult conversations you complete while swallowing back tears. You became the one who keeps the rhythm for an entire household, a family, a circle of people who rely on you. Yet while you work to keep everyone else from falling, no one was holding you. I see that. I see the nights when you lie still in the dark, not crying aloud, only breathing out a long, heavy sigh. I see the mornings when you wake before the alarm, because your heart no longer rests easily, and I do not treat that as something small. I do not dismiss it as just how life is. To me, every weary breath carries your name. I did not call you here so that you could hear another comforting word and then return to the same old cycle. I called you because a door is opening, and that door cannot be entered in a scattered state. Some doors open only when you are fully present, not half listening and half worrying, not half trusting and half doubting, not staying while already preparing to leave. I need you here, not merely in body, but with your whole heart, because what I am about to do is not only a change of external circumstances, I am rewriting the way you walk on the inside. Have you noticed that time seems to move more slowly lately, not because the days are longer, but because each hour carries more weight? This is not a sign of delay, it is a sign of transition. Before the land changes seasons, it compresses. Before a seed sprouts, it breaks open in the dark. And before you step into what is new, I allow you to feel more clearly what no longer fits, not to discourage you, but to keep you from carrying unnecessary burdens into the next stretch of the journey. You once believed that strong faith meant never feeling tired, but I tell you this mature faith knows when to stop. Stopping is not giving up, it is trusting that you are not your own savior. You were not created to carry the whole world. You were created to walk with me. And when you walk with me, there are burdens I will carry for you, doors I will open ahead of you, and battles I will not allow you to fight alone. This moment matters not because my words are loud, but because they are timely. I waited until your heart was soft enough not to break, strong enough not to harden, humble enough not to despise itself, I waited until the voices pulling you downward grew quiet, until you no longer chased approval or measured your worth by outcomes or praise. I waited until you were ready to hear a word that neither indulges fear nor crushes you with pressure. My word comes to restore order, not to add weight. If you pass by this moment, it is not because I turn away, but because you step through a turning point without noticing. I do not punish slowness, yet some seasons cannot last forever, because they are designed to lead you to a decision. And today's decision is not about doing something great, but about whether you choose to stay with me until the end. Staying is not made of grand promises, but of attention, of not letting your mind wander, not letting worry interrupt, not letting other voices drown out a call that is very near. I am here, not far away, not behind you, not waiting for you to become good enough before I come. I am here in this very moment. As you read each line and feel something touch you quietly, yet deeply, that is not a passing emotion, it is recognition. The recognition that your life is not a series of anonymous efforts, that your silent sacrifices have not disappeared into emptiness, and that something is being prepared far beyond what you ever dared to hope. So stay. Let me lead you step by step, beginning with this pause. Do not rush to find answers to every question. Do not demand immediate results. Some miracles begin with silence that is accepted, with attention that is gathered back together, with a heart that says, I am here. I am ready to listen. And when you say that, even in silence, heaven has already begun to move. My beloved child, there are battles that do not take place on visible ground, that leave no obvious marks, no sounds of collision or outward collapse. Yet these are the battles that drain you the most, because you must keep living as though everything is fine, while quietly resisting pressures no one else can see. People see you go to work, fulfill responsibilities, care for your family, answer messages, solve problems. They see your actions, but they do not see the weight behind each one. They do not hear the sighs you swallow. They do not feel the exhaustion seeping into every small decision you must make each day. I see everything. I see the days when you have to think carefully before speaking even the most ordinary sentence, afraid it might hurt someone. I see the nights when you lie still, your body unmoving, while your mind keeps running, turning a problem over and over that you have already carried all day. I see how you consistently place others first, even as your own energy is quietly running dry. And I also see the very personal loneliness you do not name, because you do not want to become a burden to anyone. You once believed that if there was no major crisis, then nothing was truly serious. But I tell you this, some of the most dangerous battles do not arrive as a blow, they arrive as erosion. They do not knock you down all at once. They slowly train you to live below the level of peace I intended for you. They teach you to accept tension as a normal state, exhaustion as an unavoidable part of responsibility, and neglect of yourself as something to be expected. And it is within that quiet acceptance that the enemy seeks to pull you farther and farther from your center. It is not by chance that the atmosphere around you has felt heavier lately, not because you have done something wrong, and not because I have withdrawn. It is a sign of tension in the unseen realm. When something precious is about to be released, resistance often increases, not to defeat you outright, but to wear you down until you let go. The enemy does not need you to abandon your faith. He only needs you to become distracted. He does not need you to deny me. He only needs you to be too busy to listen. And you have been very close to that boundary. Not the boundary of betrayal, but the boundary of exhaustion, a place where you still believe, but no longer have the strength to believe deeply, where you still pray, but your prayers become brief, carrying more duty than hope, where you still do what is right. Yet joy has thinned within you. I do not blame you for this. I want you to understand that this is precisely the moment when I call you to stop, not to quit, but to be protected. You have grown used to believing that you must hold everything together, hold the family together, hold finances together, hold emotional strength together for your children, hold an image together before others. But I never assigned you the task of holding everything by yourself. There are burdens you are carrying that I never placed on your shoulders. You carry them out of love, out of responsibility, out of a desire not to disappoint anyone. And because of that, you must now learn to distinguish between what I entrusted to you and what you took upon yourself. The invisible battle you are facing is not between you and your circumstances. It is between truth and fatigue. Truth declares that I am here, that I am acting, that I am arranging things. Fatigue whispers that you must push a little longer, endure a little more, manage on your own just a bit further before things improve. And if you are not watchful, you will begin to follow the familiar voice of weariness instead of the gentle voice of truth. I know there are moments when you ask, if everything is being arranged, why do I still feel so much pressure? But my beloved, pressure is not always a sign of misalignment. Often, it is a sign of transition. When a new door is about to open, old hinges tend to creak. When a season is about to close, unresolved things rise all at once, not to drown you, but to be brought into the light so you do not carry them into the next season. You are not weak because you feel heavy. You are in a phase where your sensitivity has increased. You are beginning to feel what you once ignored. You are recognizing relationships that have drained you more than they have nourished you. You are seeing expectations you have been striving to meet that no longer align with your identity. You are realizing that you have been silent for too long about your own legitimate needs. These realizations are not meant to confuse you. They are meant to free you. I do not need you to fight this battle with your own strength. I do not need you to prove anything. What I ask is that you do not leave the posture of listening. Do not rush to fix everything. Do not quickly conclude that this heaviness means you are going the wrong way. There are times when the wisest thing you can do is stay, observe, and allow me to do what you cannot. I know you are accustomed to being strong in silence, but true strength is not the absence of rest. True strength is knowing when to set a burden down in the right place. I am not calling you to passivity. I am calling you to trust that there is a battle you cannot see, and yet you are not alone in it. To trust that when your strength runs out, my power does not. To trust that when you stop, I do not. Right now, as you hear these words, you may feel as though someone is calling your name very softly. That is not imagination. That is me reminding you that you are being held, even when you do not feel strong. Do not measure your journey by temporary emotions. Do not assess your faith by your current level of energy. There are days when faith is not expressed through joy, but through staying through, not letting go, through choosing to believe, even while tired. This invisible battle will not last forever. It has a purpose, and that purpose is to clarify what truly belongs to me in your life and what you must release. But for that to happen, you must continue to stay without leaving the place where I am speaking to you. Do not let distraction pull you away. Do not let exhaustion decide in place of truth. You are much closer to a turning point than you realize. My beloved child, silence does not mean abandonment. You have grown accustomed to measuring my presence by sound, by clear answers, immediate changes, and obvious signs. But I do not always work in ways that you can hear right away. There are seasons when I speak often, and seasons when I choose silence, not because I have withdrawn, but because I am doing a work too delicate to be interrupted by your urgency. You have prayed and then waited. You have believed and then wondered. You have lived through days when everything seemed motionless, even though you did all you knew was right. In those days, you began to ask questions not because your faith was weak, but because you were tired. You wondered whether I still heard you, whether I was still near, whether your sacrifices truly meant anything. I do not fault you for those questions. I want you to know this: I have never been silent out of indifference. I have been silent because I was working at levels deeper than your emotions. There are things that, if I were to speak them too early, you would try to grasp with your own strength. There are promises that, if explained too clearly, would lead you without realizing it to attempt to control the process. But what I am preparing for you cannot be held by control. It can only be received through trust. That is why I choose to work within the quiet to cleanse your heart of the need to understand everything, to free your faith from depending on visible evidence, and to root it instead in the relationship between you and me. You have grown used to thinking that if I am present, you will always feel at peace. But there are seasons when peace does not arrive as a feeling. It arrives as a decision. The decision to stay. The decision not to withdraw when nothing seems to be changing. The decision not to interpret silence as rejection. In the days when you do not hear me clearly, the way you continue to walk in faithfulness becomes your answer to me. And I see that. I see the perseverance you do not even call perseverance. I see how you keep doing what is right even without immediate confirmation. To me, that is not small. The quiet you are walking through is not empty. It is full of movements your eyes have not yet learned to recognize. In this stillness, I am undoing misaligned bonds. I am loosening invisible chains that have held you longer than you realized. I am rearranging priorities within your heart, so that the things that once occupied too much space will slowly lose their power. I am doing a work that is silent yet decisive, laying a foundation that will not be shaken by future change. In this silence, you begin to notice fears you once covered with busyness. You begin to see clearly the true desires you hid because you believed they were unrealistic. You start to distinguish between the voice of responsibility, the voice of pressure, and my voice. This is not disorientation, it is refinement. I do not want you to step into what is new with a mind still crowded by old noise. If I were always speaking, you would grow accustomed to hearing without learning how to trust. But when I am silent, you are faced with a choice. Either you fill that space with worry, or you allow me to fill it with an unseen yet steady presence. I do not test you with silence to see whether you will leave. I invite you to stay so that you can learn to recognize me beyond emotion. Some relationships mature only when both can remain together without constant words. Your relationship with me is the same. You once thought that if I were truly near, you would not feel lonely. But my beloved, loneliness is not always a sign of absence. Often it is an invitation to move beyond dependence on people and circumstances, and to lean more deeply into me. I do not remove people from around you to leave you empty. I allow you to feel absence so that you may recognize that your true fullness does not come from there. And when you realize this, you will no longer cling, no longer fear loss, no longer allow the presence or absence of others to define your worth. This quiet is also where I heal. Wounds you never learned to name, hurts you became so accustomed to living with that you mistook them for part of your personality. Sorrows you learned to hide because you believed they had no place in a strong life. I do not heal you by making you forget. I heal you by removing the power those memories hold over you. And that work cannot be done in noise. It requires stillness, safety, and permission. If you look back now and notice that you have changed, becoming more sensitive, more discerning, less inclined to explain yourself, less eager for validation, that is not a weakness. It is a sign of maturity. I am making you steady in a new way, not based on how much you can endure, but on knowing to whom you belong. When you know that you belong to me, you will not panic when silence lingers, because you understand that the silence has purpose. I never stop working just because you cannot hear me. I never leave simply because you cannot feel me. I am closer than you think, doing more than you can see, and preparing a revelation at the right time. But to receive it, you must continue to stay without running ahead, without quitting halfway, without misinterpreting the silence. Some promises are revealed only to those who trust enough to wait, are humble enough not to rush, and are faithful enough not to abandon their place. This quiet will not last forever, but when it ends, you will realize that it was in the silence that the foundation was reset for a life no longer governed by fear. And when I speak again in ways you can clearly see, you will understand this. Not a single moment of your waiting was wasted, my beloved child. There are times in life when, on the surface, nothing seems to change. Yet beneath it all, everything is shifting at a very different speed. These are the moments when unseen gears begin to align. Tangled threads are loosened, and what appeared frozen is quietly being accelerated. You cannot see these movements with your physical eyes, but you can sense them as a strange restlessness within, not quite fear, not quite anticipation, but the awareness that something is drawing near enough that you can no longer live as you once did. I call this the sign of a changing season. When these invisible movements begin, you often feel pulled in two directions. One toward familiar habits, where you know how to manage and survive. The other toward a new call, not yet clearly defined, yet powerfully compelling. In that tension, you grow more tired, more sensitive, more easily distracted, not because you are weak, but because your inner frame of reference is being recalibrated. I am making you attentive to things you once overlooked, relationships that drained rather than nourished you, choices that no longer fit, rhythms of life that depleted you but once felt normal. When I change the rhythm within you, the rhythm outside will feel off. That is not error, it is realignment. Understand this so that your heart does not become unsettled. An increase in pressure is not always a sign of misalignment. Often, it is a sign of acceleration. When I begin to quicken the process, whatever remains from the old season will react all at once. Unfinished matters will demand attention. Relationships that have not been placed in their proper order will tighten. Old fears will whisper more loudly than usual, not because they are stronger, but because their time is growing short. You are moving closer to a point of transition. And for that very reason, what does not belong to the next stretch is trying to keep you where you are. In this phase, you may see things you thought were settled suddenly resurface. An old conversation returns. An unhealed memory rises up. A worry you believed was past becomes sharply present again. Do not be quick to conclude that you are moving backward. I am not pulling you back. I am bringing unfinished matters into the light so they will not follow you into the new season. Acceleration is not only about opening doors ahead, it is also about closing doors behind completely. and the closing of doors is sometimes louder than their opening. In these invisible movements, there is one thing I need you to guard carefully: your position. Position is not where you stand in the world, but where your heart takes refuge. When you allow your heart to be pulled by every signal around you, you will find yourself constantly reacting, anxious at bad news, energized by hope, discouraged when results delay. But when you hold your position in me, you will learn to observe without being swept away, to listen without panic, and to keep walking without haste. My acceleration does not require you to run, it requires you to be steady. There is a reason I do not show you the full picture all at once. If you saw everything, you would want to control it. If you knew every step in advance, you would rely on plans instead of relying on me. But what I am doing in your life cannot be sustained by planning. It is sustained by relationships. That is why I show you enough to trust, but not so much that you can control. I lead you in short segments, short enough that you must lean on me, clear enough that you do not lose your way. As the invisible movements accelerate, you will notice something important. The voices around you grow louder. People may question your choices, challenge your changes, or unintentionally pull you back toward old patterns. Do not be surprised by this. When you change position, relationships built around your former position must adjust, and not everyone is willing. I am not saying this so you will resist people. I am saying it so you will not be shaken. You do not need to convince anyone of what I am doing. When the time comes, the fruit will speak for itself. In this acceleration, I am also teaching you to distinguish between what is urgent and what is important. Many things will push their way forward, claiming urgency and demanding immediate attention. But not everything that is loud is important. What matters most right now is that you keep your inner rhythm, the rhythm of trust. When you hold that rhythm, you will not be pulled into unnecessary spirals. You will not waste energy on battles that are not yours, and you will not lose clarity under momentary pressure. This invisible acceleration is also the moment when I restore your sense of time. Before, you lived with a feeling of not enough time, not enough strength, not enough resources. But when I accelerate in the right way, you will realize that what you lacked was not time, but order. When order is restored, what once moved slowly will begin to flow. Doors that were difficult to open will open gently, and the right connections will appear without force. I am not making you busier, I am making you more effective in peace. Let me say this so your heart can rest: you are not late. The years you thought were wasted were not meaningless. I used them to build within you the qualities you will need in the next season: patience, discernment, compassion, and a quiet endurance. When I accelerate, I do not bypass the foundation. I place it correctly so that when you move faster, you do not fall. If right now you feel as though you are in an in-between place, no longer fully belonging to the old, yet not fully touching the new, know that this is the position of transformation. Do not go back out of familiarity, and do not rush forward out of impatience. Stay with me in this in-between space. It is here that the invisible movements are being synchronized, so that when you step forward, you step as a whole new person, not merely into a new situation. This acceleration is not pressure for you to prove yourself. It is grace inviting you into what has long been prepared. And I need you to remember this when I begin to accelerate. I also begin to protect. What cannot go with you will be held back. What could harm you will be removed from your path. Your part is to keep your position. Keep your heart soft. and continue to listen. The rest I have already been doing, and I am still doing now. My beloved child, there is a pattern you will gradually recognize as you walk with me, long enough just before a door opens fully. Resistance often becomes louder than ever, not because you have done something wrong, and not because you are off course. On the contrary, it is precisely because you are so close to the threshold that opposing voices try to seize your attention by every means possible. They do not always arrive in harsh forms. More often, they come dressed as reason, as sound advice, as familiar doubts you have heard in previous seasons. You may hear questions rising within you. Am I imagining this? Am I expecting too much? Wouldn't it be safer to stay where I am? These questions do not come to seek answers. They come to slow your steps. And if you are not watchful, you may mistake this caution for wisdom, when in truth it is fear borrowing the language of logic to keep you still. I need you to understand this clearly so you are not swept away. Resistance is not a measure of being wrong. Very often, it is a sign of value. Ordinary things are rarely opposed with intensity. What carries no deep transformation usually does not need to be blocked. But when something has been prepared to change the rhythm of your life, to open a new depth of identity and purpose, what is familiar to darkness will not surrender its place easily. Opposition does not come only from the outside. At times, the loudest voice rises from within you. It is the echo of moments when you once hoped and were disappointed, of decisions that cost you dearly, of dreams you tucked away to protect yourself. Those memories are not evil. They once helped you survive. But if you allow them to govern the present, they will keep you from stepping into the new thing I am leading you toward. I am not asking you to deny the past. I am asking you to place it in its proper position, the position of a teacher, not the one holding the steering wheel. In this season, you may also notice that some people around you begin to respond differently. Some grow skeptical of your choices. Some casually diminish the change you are experiencing, calling it dreamy, unrealistic, or unnecessary. Others do not oppose you directly, yet they pull you back into old stories, old roles, as if you had never crossed into a new awareness. I am not saying this so you will close your heart or judge them. I am saying it so you do not lose your way. Not everyone is called to walk with you through every stage. And someone's lack of understanding does not mean you are wrong. Often, it simply means you have moved into a different rhythm. Amid this rising resistance, what I ask you to hold is not argument, but steadiness. You do not need to prove to anyone that I am at work in your life. You do not need to explain every decision, nor persuade those who are not ready to listen. When you are in the right position, grace will speak for itself. When you walk in the right rhythm, doors will open on their own. And when you stand in the right identity, resources will find you. I do not build what is new through noise. I build it through conviction. There is a very subtle temptation in this season that you must recognize, the temptation to go back in order to feel at ease, to return to what is familiar, what you know how to manage, what does not require you to trust any further. It offers temporary comfort, but it comes at the cost of continuing to live beneath the level to which I have called you. I do not force you across the threshold. I honor your freedom. But you must know this false calm can never replace true peace. True peace does not come from avoiding tension. It comes from being in the right position, even when there is still noise around you. The way you remain spiritually steady in this season is not by doing more, but by listening more selectively. Not every voice deserves your attention. Not every emotion requires action. Some days, The most spiritual thing you can do is not react, not to provocation, not to fleeting fear, not to the pressure to decide immediately. When you refuse to react impulsively, you create space for me to act in my way. Return to the simple things that once nourished your faith stillness. Honest prayers that are not polished. Moments when you allow your heart to rest before me without asking for anything. It is in that simplicity that you will recognize my voice more clearly among all the others. I do not shout to overpower the noise. I speak softly enough that only those who truly want to hear will notice. Do not forget this resistance has limits, but promises do not. The voices trying to make you doubt will not last forever. They grow loud only in the moment when you stand before a choice. When you step through, when you keep moving forward, even while your heart trembles, those voices will gradually lose their weight, not because you defeated them with argument, but because you did not allow them to decide in place of faith. You are very close to a turning point, not a turning point of impulsive emotion, but of reorientation. And that is precisely why the pressure is rising. Do not let it convince you that you must retreat. Let it remind you that you are standing before something that matters. I am with you in every breath, every hesitation, every difficult decision. You do not cross this threshold alone. My beloved child, there are times when the strongest thing you can do is neither to move forward nor to step back, but to stand still. Not standing still out of fear, not out of a lack of courage, but because you have chosen to place your full trust in what I am doing. The world teaches you that value lies in action, in speed, in always having answers and constantly showing progress. But I teach you something deeper. Some turning points open only when you are steady enough not to act from anxiety. You have grown accustomed to thinking that if you do nothing, everything will fall behind. You have learned to tell yourself that slowing down even slightly means missing an opportunity. But, my beloved, there are opportunities that cannot be missed, because they are appointed to meet you. When I have arranged something for your life, no one can take it simply because you paused to trust. On the contrary, it is your stillness in faith that keeps you from undermining what I am building. You will feel a strange kind of pressure, the pressure to react to doubt, to react to resistance, to react to the fear that if you do not do something right now, everything will go wrong. That pressure does not come from me. I do not drive you with panic. I lead you with peace. When you feel pushed to decide from a place of confusion, know that this is not my rhythm. My rhythm does not steal your breath. My rhythm steadies your heart. Even when you do not yet understand everything. Standing still does not mean passivity. Standing still in me is a deeply active choice. You actively refuse to let fear take the wheel. You actively refuse to let the past command the present. You actively refuse to let noise determine direction. You actively choose to trust that there are battles you do not need to fight, because I have gone before you. You actively place burdens down where they belong, instead of carrying them simply because you believe they are your responsibility. In that stillness, your faith does not sleep. It stays awake in a different way, quiet, deep, unshowy, yet strong. I know there are moments when you feel torn on one hand. You hear the invitation to trust and wait. On the other, you see that many things in reality are still unresolved. You worry about your loved ones. You worry about your health. You worry about numbers, deadlines, and questions that have no answers yet. You wonder how you can stand still when life continues to demand that you move forward. But, my beloved child, I am not asking you to abandon responsibility. I am inviting you to change how you carry it, not carrying it with fear, but with surrender. When you do what needs to be done with a quiet heart, you are standing still in me, even while your hands remain busy. Remember this, there is a very subtle difference between action that flows from faith and action that flows from panic. Action born of panic is always rushed, always accompanied by the feeling that if I don't act now, everything will be lost. Action born of faith is steady, clear, and does not need to justify itself. In this season, I am teaching you to recognize that difference. Not every opportunity must be seized. Not every invitation must be answered. Not every problem requires your intervention. There are things I hold back not to confuse you, but to protect you from moving ahead of the right time. There are doors that open only when you stop pushing. The harder you push, the heavier they become. But when you stand still, lower your hands, take a deep breath, and trust, you will see the hinges begin to move on their own. I'm not doing this to test your patience without purpose. I am teaching you to recognize guidance that does not come through pressure. When you grow accustomed to standing still before me, you will no longer be ruled by the frantic rhythm of the world, and you will walk in a new kind of freedom, freedom from having to constantly prove, explain, or chase. In this stillness, I am doing very concrete work. I am arranging people. I am adjusting my timing. I am closing doors that, if opened now, would wound you. I am opening paths you cannot yet see because your perspective is still low. You do not see because you do not need to see yet. You only need to know that nothing is forgotten in my hands, not a single prayer, not a single tear, not one quiet sacrifice. Allow me to say this plainly so your heart can rest. You do not need to activate anything by your own strength. Miracles do not come because you are tense enough. They come because you trust enough. And trust, in this season, is not expressed through grand words, but through not running away from silence. When you remain in that silence, I have space to speak more clearly, lead more deeply, and prepare you more thoroughly for what is about to open. Do not fear that stillness will cause you to fall behind. Do not fear that others will move ahead of you. You are not running a race against anyone. You are walking a journey measured by growth, not by speed. What I have prepared for you cannot be taken by someone else, nor can it be lost because you slowed down to breathe. On the contrary, it is precisely when you dare to slow down that you become alert enough to recognize the true moment. Let this stillness do a deep work within you. Silence the voice of self-condemnation. Calm the fear of being left behind. And clarify that your identity is not rooted in how much you can accomplish, but in whom you belong to. When that identity is firmly set, you will walk without panic, decide without trembling, and trust without needing to see ahead. This stillness is not the end, it is a launching ground. From here, you will step forward with a different rhythm, not rushed, not delayed, but right. Yet before you move, stay a little longer. Let me finish what I am doing in the hidden place. When I say, it is time, you will know, and when you step forward, you will do so with a peace you have never known before. My beloved child, before I open a new path for you, there is a work I always do with great care, restoring identity. Not merely adjusting outward habits, not simply easing circumstances, but reaching the deepest place where you understand who you are and from where you live. Because if you enter what is new with the old self, you will use old patterns to hold new grace, and that will exhaust you again. I am not bringing you out of one cycle only to lead you into a more refined one. You have lived too long with a definition of yourself shaped by pressure. Pressure to be right. Pressure to be enough. Pressure not to disappoint anyone. Pressure to prove that what you endured had meaning. Those pressures do not always come from others. Most of them grow quietly within you. You learn to become the one who is fine, the one who is reliable, the one who can carry it all. And little by little, you tied your worth to your capacity to endure. You believed that if you stopped bracing yourself, everything would collapse. But, my beloved child, your identity was never built on endurance. It was founded on relationships. You are not the sum of what you can accomplish. You are not the outcome of sacrifices that others never see. You are not the roles you carry in your family, in your work, or in your relationships. Those things can change. They can end. They can be misunderstood. But your identity cannot. It begins with this truth: you belong to me before you do anything, before you prove anything, before you try to be right in anyone's eyes. When you lose this point of origin, you live in constant striving. When you return to it, you live in rest even while your hands remain busy. The restoration of identity does not happen in a single emotional moment. It unfolds through layers of awareness being gently peeled back. I begin by helping you notice the inner scripts that have quietly shaped you for years. I have to be strong. I must not make mistakes. I must not burden anyone. I only have value when I am useful. These voices once helped you survive difficult seasons. I do not deny that. But they were never designed to lead you into what is next. If you carry them forward, you will turn blessing into burden, opportunity into pressure, and guidance into obligation. That is why I invite you to lay down those old definitions, not all at once, not by force, but by light. Light does not shove darkness aside, it simply appears, and darkness withdraws. As you begin to see that you are loved not because you hold everything together, but because you are you, a deep and genuine relief will spread within you. That relief does not make you lazy, it makes you honest. Honest about your limits, honest about your needs, honest about what you are no longer called to carry. I know there is a fear buried deep within you that is hard to name, the fear that if you are no longer the one who carries, you will no longer be needed. The fear that if you stop striving, you will be left behind. The fear that if you say, "I am tired," you will disappoint someone. But hear me clearly, I am not building your life on the fear of abandonment. I am building it on an unshakable bond. You do not have to secure your place through exhaustion. You already have that place and no one can take it from you. The restoration of identity also asks you to look again at wounds that have quietly bent the way you walk. There are hurts that make you constantly alert, memories that cause you to react before you have time to listen, moments when you learned that silence felt safer than honesty. I do not rush you out of those memories. I step into them with you. I remove their authority over the present. They are no longer allowed to decide whom you trust, how open you are, or how far you dare to go. They become witnesses of what I have carried you through, not the ones steering the journey ahead. As identity is restored, you will notice a clear shift. You no longer react the way you used to. Criticism does not pierce as deeply. Praise no longer lifts you too high. You begin to live from a steadier center without needing to prove, defend, or compare. You will find yourself more discerning in your words, clearer in your decisions, and more at peace in seasons of not knowing. This is not you closing your heart. This is you knowing where you belong. I am also restoring the way you see me. Without realizing it, You once viewed me through the lens of authority figures in your life, those you had to please, meet expectations for, or earn approval from. When you carried that lens into your relationship with me, you lived under spiritual pressure, afraid of disappointing me, afraid of not being good enough, afraid that good things might be taken away. I do not want you to live like that. I want you to know that our relationship is not built on fear, but on trust. When you trust, you obey not because you fear punishment, but because you know you are being led. What I am preparing for you requires a steady identity, not because you will have to carry more, but because you will be entrusted with more. If you receive much before identity is restored, you will lose yourself in the very gifts I give. That is why, before I expand what is outside of you, I expand what is within you. Before I change the rhythm of your life, I change its center. This is grace, not delay. Let me say this so you are not afraid. You do not need to become someone else to step into what is new. You only need to return to who you truly are, the version of you not distorted by fear, not driven by obligation, not defined by the past. That version has been within you all along, preserved through every season when you thought you were merely enduring. Now, I am bringing that version into the light not so you can display it, but so you can live. When you step into the next stretch, you will not walk with the familiar tension. You will walk with a quiet conviction. You will no longer need constant reassurance that you are on the right path, because within you there will be a new clarity. And if there are moments when you feel yourself wavering again, remember this: the restoration of identity is not a one-time event, it is a process. Each time you choose trust over self-condemnation, rest over striving, truth over performance, you are reinforcing the foundation. Stay in this work a little longer. Do not rush outward while I am still working inward. What I am building in you is not only for you to survive a single season, but for you to walk a long journey steady, free, and no longer losing yourself in the midst of good things. My beloved child, there is a layer of work I never neglect when I am preparing you for what is new, the healing of memory and emotion. You do not walk forward only with the feet of the present. You walk carrying what has been etched into your memory, experiences that have shaped how you react, choose, and trust. If those imprints are still steering, you will bring the past into the future without realizing it, and then wonder why old cycles keep repeating in new settings. I know you have grown accustomed to living with certain memories as if they were truths about who you are, not because you wanted them to be, but because you had to adapt. Some memories tied to pain taught you constant vigilance. Some memories of failure led you to lower your expectations to protect yourself. Some moments of being misunderstood, overlooked, or unfairly blamed taught you that silence felt safer. Those strategies once helped you survive. I do not deny that. But survival is not my destination for you. I am calling you into the fullness of life where memory is no longer a chain, but a witness of restoration. Healing memory does not mean erasing it. I will not make you forget what happened. I make what happened lose its power to define you. When memory is unhealed, it whispers whenever you approach something new. Don't trust too much. Don't hope too deeply. Don't open your heart like before. And you mistake that voice for wisdom. But in truth, it is fear that has been carefully learned. I do not blame you for listening to that fear in earlier seasons. I am simply inviting you to lay it down in this one. There are emotions you have buried deeply, believing that if you opened them, you would lose control. Sadness compressed into fatigue, Anger disguised as busyness, disappointment masked as logic, and then you wonder why your inner world feels constantly taut, like a drawn string. I do not heal you by telling you to stop feeling that way. I heal you by allowing those emotions to be named correctly, in a safe space where I am with you, without judgment, without haste. There are memories you avoid because each time you touch them, your heart tightens. You think avoidance is the best way to keep living. But, my beloved, what is untouched continues to govern quietly. I do not force you back into painful places alone. I enter them with you. I stand between that memory and your present. So you are no longer pulled backward by old emotions. When I am present within memory, memory loses its power to make you tremble as it once did. You will recognize healing taking place when your reactions begin to change. Not because you are suppressing anything, but because the wound is no longer as deep. Words that once cut now only graze the surface. Situations that once triggered fear no longer send you into panic. You do not become numb, you become free. Free to choose response instead of reflex. Free to trust without having to constantly reassure yourself. I am healing you from the inner narratives rooted in memory, the sentences you repeated so often they felt true. I always come second. I am not a priority. I have to try twice as hard to be enough. Those words did not come from me. They were formed in moments when you needed an explanation for pain. Now, I am replacing them with a different truth, quiet, unforced, but enduring. You are seen. You are held. You are being led. When this truth settles deeply enough, the old voices will lose their weight on their own. Healing memory also changes how you see others. When you are unhealed, you easily assign motives, remain guarded, and close your heart. But as wounds are tended, you begin to distinguish more clearly between past and present. You no longer punish the person in front of you for the failures of someone in memory. You no longer take responsibility for what does not belong to you. You learn to love without trading away your peace. I know there is a quiet fear within you if you let go of the past. Will you become more fragile? I tell you this, no. You will become strong in a different way. Strong not because you are always ready to endure, but because you know where you can return. When memory is no longer a minefield, you will walk with a quiet confidence, without needing to display strength, without needing to defend yourself. There will be moments when you suddenly realize you are standing in a situation that once made you tremble, and this time, you are calm. Not because you have grown hardened, but because the old no longer holds authority. That is the sign of healing. And that healing does not come overnight. It comes through each moment you choose honesty with me. Each time you refuse self-condemnation. Each time you allow yourself to rest without guilt. I do not heal memories so you can return to the past. I heal it so you can move forward without being pulled back. I do this before opening what is new. Because what is new requires a heart free enough to receive. When memory is set in its rightful place, you will no longer fear repetition. You will know the past has completed its role, teaching you, refining you, and now it no longer holds the wheel. Let me continue this work within you. Do not rush to measure the process by fleeting emotions. There will be days when you feel very light. There will be days when old memories knock again. That does not mean you are moving backward. It means a deeper layer is being touched. And each time, I am there, never weary, never discouraged to lead you through. As memories are healed, you will step into what is new with different eyes. You will no longer see everything through the lens of fear, but through trust. You will realize that the past does not disappear, it is transformed. And in that transformation, you will find a very real freedom, the freedom to live, to trust, and to receive what I am preparing, without trembling because of what has already been. My beloved child, there is a very thin threshold that you can only cross after memory has been healed, the threshold of daring to trust again. Not trusting as though you were never wounded, and not trusting naively, ignoring all the lessons you have learned. I am speaking of a new kind of trust, deeper, slower, more awake, a trust that does not need to shout to reassure itself, yet is steady enough to stand when the winds shift. This trust does not come from forgetting what was broken, it comes from no longer allowing what was broken to define your future. You have trusted before and been hurt. You have opened your heart and then closed it again to protect yourself. You have prayed with your whole heart and then felt disappointed when things did not unfold as you expected. These experiences left marks not only in memory, but in how you assess risk, in how much you allow yourself to hope, in the distance you keep from what is sacred. I know there are moments when you wonder, what if I trust one more time and it hurts again? That question does not sadden me, it tells me you are being honest. And that honesty is good soil for new trust to be planted. The trust I am re-establishing in you does not require certainty in advance. It does not ask you to see the outcome before you step. It invites you to take one very small step, so small that fear does not have time to object, and then another, steady and unshowy. You do not need to commit your whole life right now. You only need to be faithful to this moment, the moment you choose not to let doubt take the wheel. Each time you choose this, however gently, trust is built another layer quietly, but firmly. I know you once confused trust with control. You thought that trusting meant keeping everything from falling apart, calculating so you would not be hurt again. But true trust does not live by preventing risk. It lives by placing risk in the right hands. When you try to control in order to trust safely, you will grow tired. When you surrender in order to trust fully, you will grow light. Light not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because you are no longer carrying what was never yours to carry. You have trusted people before and been disappointed. That taught you to shrink your circle of trust, becoming so selective that you nearly stood alone. I do not blame that caution. It once protected you. But new trust does not require you to throw every door wide open. It teaches you to place boundaries correctly. Trust is not letting everything in. Trust is knowing who and what deserves your presence. When trust is restored, you will no longer guard yourself with tension. You will discern with peace. There is a very subtle shift when trust is healed. You stop making promises to yourself like, I will not hope anymore. Instead, you learn to hope with limits, limits not meant to protect you from disappointment, but to keep your heart anchored in the present. You learn to wait without tormenting yourself with predictions. You learn to expect good while remaining at rest if good arrives slowly. This is mature trust. It does not demand speed, and it does not bargain with fear. I am also restoring your trust in yourself. You have doubted your own discernment, questioned your perceptions, mistrusted your inner voice. You feared reading the signs wrong, feared believing the wrong thing. But, my beloved child, I am teaching you something very important. You do not need to be perfect to be rightly led. I do not guide you by your flawless accuracy. I guide you by your willingness. When you walk with humility, I will adjust your direction. When you misstep, I will stop you. New trust does not require you to never be wrong. It allows you to be wrong without falling apart. There will be days when your trust feels very still, like a calm lake. There will be days when it trembles like a passing breeze. That does not weaken trust, it makes it real. I am not seeking a faith without emotion. I am seeking a faith not ruled by emotion. When you learn to let emotions pass without deciding the truth for you, you will discover that trust is not as fragile as you once thought. It is like a root growing deep. The surface may move, but the ground beneath does not shift. Restored trust also changes how you pray. You no longer pray to persuade me. You pray to draw near to me. Your prayers are no longer crowded with requests. They contain more space to breathe. In those spaces, I work. I arrange what you cannot name. I loosen knots you have not yet understood. And you will realize that many answers come not because you prayed intensely enough, but because you stayed long enough. As new trust is forming, do not measure it by how strong you feel. Trust does not always make you feel strong. Sometimes it makes you soft. Soft enough to listen. Soft enough to adjust. Soft enough to say, I don't know, without shame. This softness does not weaken you. It makes you alive. And living trust is flexible. It bends with the wind without breaking. When you dare to trust again, you are not returning to the starting point. You are stepping into a higher circle, the circle of understanding. You no longer trust because you have never known pain. You trust because you have known pain and still choose to move forward. That choice is precious. It is quiet, often unseen, but it resounds deeply in the unseen realm. Each time you choose to trust one step further, inner doors open. And when inner doors open, outer doors will come at the right time. Let this new trust grow at its own pace. Do not force it. Do not compare it to anyone else's. Do not ask yourself, have I trusted you enough? Simply place your heart in the right position each day, the position of trust. When you do that, I will do the rest. I will lead you through every turn with a certainty you have never known before, not the certainty that everything will be easy, but the certainty that you will not walk alone. Restored trust is not a destination, it is a way of living. And when you live this way, awake, humble, unhurried, you will be ready for the next stretch, where what I have prepared will not only be seen, but kept for the long term. My beloved child, there is a very particular moment in the journey of faith that not everyone recognizes, the moment when waiting is no longer a burden, yet has not become a visible outcome. It lies between two rhythms, between the days you have learned to stand still and the days you will walk with new conviction. This is the time when I transform the very nature of waiting within you. Before, you waited in tension, in questioning, in the fear that passing time would steal opportunity. Now, I am teaching you to wait differently, to wait in order, to wait in peace, to wait like one who knows the seed has already taken root and is simply awaiting the right moment to break through the soil. You have grown accustomed to viewing waiting as a sign of lack, a lack of answers, a lack of resources, a lack of affirmation. But, my beloved child, in my hands, waiting is not an empty space, it is a prepared space. That space allows me to arrange what you cannot reach on your own people. Timing, circumstances, and even the deep motives within your heart. When you are still restless, you rush to assign meaning to every sign. When you are at peace, you learn to let meaning unfold according to my order. That is the difference between weary waiting and fruitful waiting. Before, you believed that the most important thing was to receive. Now, you are beginning to understand that the greater grace is to keep peace when circumstances shift, to keep humility when doors open, to keep clarity when many voices pull you in different directions. These things cannot be learned in haste. They grow only in waiting that has purpose. In this season, you may notice very small yet very real changes. You react more slowly to news that once sent you into panic. You no longer measure the worth of a day by the number of tasks completed. You begin to hear the inner voice more clearly, not because life has grown quieter, but because your heart has become more ordered. These are signs that a harvest is forming. Before I allow you to see change on the outside, I make change on the inside firm, so that you will not be swept away by the very good I give you. Harvest does not arrive like a sudden downpour that makes everything bloom overnight. Harvest comes when the soil has softened enough, the roots have grown deep enough, and the trunk is strong enough to carry fruit. You have passed through seasons where survival was your only focus. Now I am leading you into a different season, a season of ordered fruitfulness. This requires you to release an old habit, the habit of measuring progress by urgency. I invite you to measure by faithfulness instead. Faithful in small things. Faithful to healthy rhythms. Faithful to the truth I have placed within you. Do not despise days that seem ordinary. You may expect harvest to come with heightened emotion, memorable events, or dramatic change. Yet often, harvest begins with stability. A morning when you wake up without heaviness, a conversation carried out with respect, a decision made without panic. These are first fruits, not loud, but clear signs that the tree has begun to bear. As waiting gives way to harvest, I also reshape your expectations. Before, you thought that when what you longed for arrived, all anxiety would disappear. But I tell you, this harvest does not remove every challenge. It places challenges in their proper proportion. When you have a foundation, challenges no longer threaten you. They become opportunities to live out what you have learned. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin asking, "How am I being invited to live in this situation?" That is the mark of maturity. Harvest is also the season when I teach you stewardship, not to control, but to care. You will learn when to take hold and when to release, when to say yes and when to say not yet. This discernment does not come from formulas, it comes from relationships. When you stay close to me, you will recognize that not every open door is meant to be entered, and not every opportunity is meant to be seized. Some things I show you simply to remind you that I can, while I lead you to choose what fits your timing and your present capacity. In this season, you will also see me do something else. I restore respect first. The respect you have for yourself. You stop diminishing your story. Stop speaking lightly of what you have endured. Stop overlooking your quiet efforts. As you begin to honor your own journey, you will notice that others adjust how they treat you, not because you demand it, but because you are standing in the right place. And when you stand rightly, order around you begins to realign. You may not yet see fruit in the way you expected, but I want you to look differently, see how you are responding differently to the same circumstances. See how you keep peace in conversations that once unsettled you. See how you no longer chase immediate affirmation. This is an inner harvest, a foundational harvest, and it is the condition that allows the outer harvest to endure. I am not in a hurry to bless, because I value sustainability more than impression. What I am preparing for you is not a brief moment of brilliance that fades, but a flow that can nourish you and those you love over a long stretch of time. So if your current rhythm feels slow but steady, be at rest. You are moving in the right direction. I have not forgotten you, and I have overlooked nothing. I am completing what I began. Do not return to the habit of comparison. Do not let other people's stories make you restless. Every seed has its own time to bloom, and what I have planted in you has matured enough that you can sense its fragrance, even if you do not yet see it fully. Harvest has begun not with cheers, but with steadiness, and from that steadiness, what you have been waiting for will come to you at the right time, in a way that no longer causes you to lose yourself. My beloved child, blessing does not come to test you, but to be stewarded. Many people tremble at the thought of abundance, not because they despise good things, but because they have seen good things become burdens. You, too. We have carried that fear, the fear that when doors open, you will not know how to hold them, the fear that when resources arrive, you will lose your peace, the fear that when life expands, you will drift from what is essential. I do not fault that fear. I simply want you to know this: I would not bring you into this season if you were not mature enough to stand firm. Stewarding blessing is not about controlling tightly, it is about caring rightly. Control is born of the fear of loss. Care is born of understanding value. When you control, you become tense and defensive. When you care, you become attentive and free. I am teaching you to move from a reflex of hoarding into a rhythm of discernment, knowing when to keep, when to give, when to invest, and when to rest. That rhythm does not come from formulas, it comes from a living relationship between you and me. There is a reason I lead you into abundance slowly. Abundance is not only about numbers, it is an atmosphere. If the inner atmosphere is still ruled by scarcity, you will use abundance to patch fear, and fear will only produce more scarcity. But when the inner atmosphere is reordered, abundance becomes a tool that serves life, not a sedative for anxiety. This is the work I am doing in you, making your heart calm enough to receive without panic, humble enough to use without pride, and wise enough to share without being depleted. In this season, you will realize that you are being invited to steward not only money, but also time, energy, and attention. Before, you may have given out of pressure, giving to be accepted, giving to avoid conflict, giving because you were afraid to say no. Now I am teaching you to give out of joy. Joy is not a fleeting emotion, it is an inner confirmation that what you are doing aligns with my rhythm. When you give from joy, you are not emptied, you are replenished. And when you keep back through discernment, you are not being selfish. You are caring for the source so that it can continue to flow. There will be people who come when they see that you are steadier, broader, brighter. Not everyone who comes is meant to stay for the right purpose. I do not say this to make you suspicious. I say it to help you discern. Boundaries do not close love. Boundaries keep love from being exhausted. When you know what you are called to in this season, you will no longer feel guilty about declining what is good but not timely. You will learn to say not yet without explanation, and to say yes without anxiety. There is a very subtle shift when you begin to steward through order. You stop seeking safety from numbers and begin to find safety in guidance. There will be moments when the numbers are not ideal, yet your heart is at rest. And there will be moments when the numbers increase, yet you do not rush to celebrate. You pause, you pray, you realign priorities. That is not a lack of faith, it is mature faith. Faith does not chase emotion, faith walks with wisdom. I am restoring how you understand keeping. Before, keeping was tied to fear, fear of lack, fear of loss, fear of tomorrow. Now, keeping becomes an act of care, keeping in order to nurture, keeping in order to prepare, keeping so that you can give at the right time. You will notice yourself planning not out of anxiety, but out of reverence. You will find yourself saying enough to drain temptations, not out of austerity, but because you have tasted true sufficiency. In this season, pay attention to the small decisions. Sustainable blessing is not preserved by rare, dramatic choices, but by small choices repeated daily. How you begin your morning, how you rest when needed, how you speak about money without self-degradation, without boasting, without judgment, how you receive an opportunity neither grasping nor avoiding. Each small choice is a link in the new order I am building within you. You may be surprised to find that you are no longer triggered by things that once made you anxious. That does not mean you have become indifferent. It means you have gained a foundation. When the foundation is firm, you can handle fluctuation without losing direction. And when you do not lose direction, blessing does not intoxicate you. I am not afraid to bless you. I am simply waiting until you are ready to keep it well. I also want you to know this stewarding blessing includes resting. Resting not because you are giving up, but because you trust. Rest is not a useless gap. It is the place where I renew your strength. When you learn to rest at the right time, you will not need dramatic surges to keep going. You will walk steadily, sustainably, and with joy. If at times you feel uncertain in the face of good things arriving, remember this uncertainty is not failure. It is a sign of newness. I am with you in every decision. I do not withdraw when you need discernment. I do not remain silent when you need wisdom. Ask me, listen, and trust that I have prepared you for this season not to overwhelm you, but to make you a careful steward of blessing for yourself and for many others. Keep walking in this order. Blessing will not steal your peace. Peace will teach you how to hold blessings. And when order is established, you will see that abundance is no longer a fear, but a rightful flow flowing through you, nourishing you, and extending to the places I am sending you to touch. My child, respect is not something you go and ask for, nor something you earn by proving yourself. Respect is the natural result of an inner order that has been restored. When you stand in your rightful place, neither above nor beneath those around you will gradually adjust how they treat you. Not because you demand it, but because you carry a clarity that is difficult to dismiss. Before, you grew accustomed to lowering yourself in silence. You yielded space, yielded voice, yielded priority, not out of true humility, but out of fear of conflict, fear of making others uncomfortable, fear of being misunderstood as selfish. You called that love, but beneath it was insecurity. I do not blame you for learning that way in order to survive, but, my beloved child, if you continue to live that way in this season, you will unknowingly deny what I am restoring within you. Beloved child, the respect I am building does not come from you becoming hard or defensive. It comes from you no longer abandoning yourself. When you begin to listen to your legitimate needs, when you say no without excessive apology, when you choose silence, not out of fear, but out of discernment, a new boundary is established. That boundary does not distance you from others, it makes relationships healthier. And in healthy relationships, respect has room to stand. Respect begins first with what you give to yourself. Not a loud self-importance, but the way you speak to yourself when you make a mistake, the way you look back on your journey without denying the effort you have poured out, the way you allow yourself to rest without self-condemnation. When you treat yourself with this quiet respect, you will no longer tolerate ways of being treated that erode your dignity. Not because you are angry, but because you now have a foundation. In this season, You are no longer triggered by disrespect in the way you once were, not because it has disappeared entirely, but because it no longer has power. Before, a dismissive remark could trouble you for an entire day. Now, you hear it, you recognize it, and you choose how to respond or not respond without losing your peace. That is the sign of restored dignity. When dignity stands firm, offense no longer reaches the core. I am teaching you an important lesson. Not every form of disrespect needs to be corrected immediately. There are moments when silence, chosen rightly, speaks more than argument. There are moments when continuing to walk in clarity will place others face to face with their own questions. I am not calling you to become bitter, nor am I calling you to endure endlessly. I am calling you to know who you are, so that from that place you know when to speak, when to step back, and when to continue forward. Restored respect will also change how you enter new spaces, new relationships, new opportunities, new responsibilities. You will no longer enter them with a posture of asking permission to exist. You will step in with grounded humility, neither boasting nor hiding, neither shrinking nor trembling. You know you have a place, not because you are above anyone, but because you have been placed rightly. And when you enter like that, the right doors will open, and the wrong doors will close on their own. You may notice some old relationships changing, not because you have become cold, but because the order has shifted. Relationships that once relied on one-sided yielding will struggle when you no longer diminish yourself. That may grieve you, I know, but, my beloved child, that grief is the cost of maturity. I do not remove relationships to make you lonely. I free you from patterns that make you smaller. And in the space that is created, healthier connections will come, connections that respect your presence, not just your usefulness. I am restoring respect in the way you speak about yourself. Before, you may have spoken lightly of yourself, joking about your struggles, downplaying your achievements, brushing aside your efforts to avoid scrutiny. Now, I am teaching you to speak the truth without needing to justify it, not boasting, not diminishing, simply speaking rightly. When your words carry order, those who hear will sense their weight. The respect I restore does not make you distant, it makes you accessible in the right way. Others will feel safe around you because you are no longer seeking validation from them. You do not need them to lift you up in order to stand. And that freedom creates a different atmosphere, an atmosphere where cooperation, trust, and respect can grow. In this season, you will learn to respect your time. Not every invitation needs to be accepted. Not every conversation needs to be prolonged. Not every problem needs to be solved immediately. When you respect your time, you are declaring that your life has value. And when you treat time that way, others will adjust their expectations accordingly. This is not selfishness, this is stewardship. Remember, this respect does not come to make you higher than others, it comes to make you stand upright. Upright to love without trading away dignity. Upright to serve without erasing yourself. Upright to receive blessing without being consumed by it. When you stand upright, you reflect something very deep, the order of my life within you. And as that order continues to be strengthened, you will see something beautiful without changing the world by your own effort. Simply by living rightly, the world around you will begin to shift its rhythm. Respect will no longer be something you chase. It will walk with you like a shadow with its form. Quiet, unassuming, yet steady and true. Keep walking in this dignity. Do not return to the habit of diminishing yourself out of fear of loss. You do not lose when you stand in the right place. You only begin to truly live. And in that life, what I have prepared will have room to remain unshaken, undistorted, and undiminished. My beloved child, there is a very subtle yet profoundly important shift as you enter this season. Connections are no longer formed out of lack, but out of inner fullness. Before, you may have bonded because you needed to be understood, needed support, needed affirmation. Those needs were not wrong. They reflected spaces you once had to fill on your own. But as identity is restored, memories are healed, and dignity is set back in its rightful place, I begin to do something new. I bring people who do not come to complete you, but to walk alongside you. Right connections do not arrive noisily. They do not require drama to prove their value. You will recognize them by a feeling that is quiet, yet unmistakable safety. In that space, you do not have to perform, explain excessively, or make yourself smaller to fit. You can be present as you truly are without hiding, without posturing. And in that naturalness, you will know that this is not a relationship built on the fear of loss, but on mutual respect. This is very different from earlier connections formed in seasons of survival. Back then, you connected quickly, bonded deeply, but also became easily drained. You gave much, sometimes more than you had, because you feared that if you did not give, you would be left behind. I do not blame you for that. You did what you knew to preserve life. But this season is different. In this season, I am not calling you to connect through self-sacrifice. I am calling you to connect through wholehearted presence. My beloved child, new connections will come in a different order, perhaps slower, but deeper, perhaps fewer, but more enduring. You will find that you are no longer swept into the anxiety of having to hold on to someone. You no longer panic when distance appears. You no longer measure relationships by frequency of contact or intensity of emotion. Instead, you look at the quality of presence, whether you are respected, whether truth can be spoken, whether boundaries are honored. These are the new standards I am placing within your heart. Not every right connection is meant to stay for a lifetime. There are people I bring to you for a very specific stretch of the road, to open a door, to confirm a direction, to walk with you through a particular season. Their rightness is not measured by duration, but by purpose. When you understand this, you will no longer cling to what has completed its assignment. You will know how to say thank you and let it go in peace, without bitterness, without self-blame. In this season, you will notice a change in how you are perceived, not because you are trying to impress, but because the light within you has become steadier. When you no longer need affirmation, you become trustworthy. When you no longer strive to take up space, you naturally have a place. The right people will sense this and draw near, not to extract from you, but to build alongside you. And those who are not aligned will quietly realize they no longer fit. I do not need you to push anyone away. Order will do its own work. Be attentive to a very subtle temptation in this season, the temptation to return to familiar connections simply because they are familiar. Familiarity can offer a false sense of safety, but it does not nourish what I am now forming. If you feel the urge to go back only because you are afraid of beginning again, pause and listen. I do not close doors to leave you alone. I close doors so you are not pulled backward from the new rhythm. And I do not leave you alone in that new rhythm. I am bringing people who know how to walk with you, not drag you along. Right connections will also challenge you in healthy ways. They will not affirm every decision, but neither will they diminish you. They are safe enough to speak the truth and humble enough to listen. In such relationships, you will find yourself sharpened without being worn down. That is a very clear sign of right timing. I do not send people who only make you comfortable. I send people who help you become aligned. You may have to relearn how to build relationships more slowly, with clearer boundaries, with less explaining, with deeper listening. This may feel unfamiliar, even slightly lonely for a short while. But remember, temporary loneliness in growth is better than crowdedness in misalignment. I do not rush to connect you just so you will not feel empty. I connect you when you are steady enough not to lose yourself in closeness. In this season, you will also learn to let me choose those who walk with you. Before, you may have chosen through intense emotion, urgent need, or pressured circumstances. Now, you are learning to wait for a quiet inner confirmation, unhurried, unannounced. When peace remains after the encounter, that is a sign. When you do not feel the need to shrink yourself, that is a sign. When you can say no and the relationship still honors you, that is a sign. I do not hide these signs from you. I place them very near, very clear. For those who are willing to slow down, trust that the right connections are on their way, and they will arrive when you can receive them without losing yourself. You do not need to hunt for them. You do not need to promote yourself. You only need to continue living rightly aligned with the order I am establishing, faithful to the boundaries I am teaching you to keep, grounded in the dignity I am restoring. When you live this way, what belongs to you will recognize you. Keep walking forward. Do not go back out of fear. Do not run ahead out of impatience. The right people will not require persuasion to stay. They will come, remain, and walk with you in a peaceful rhythm, the rhythm of maturity, of trust, and of what is being revealed little by little. My beloved child, not every departure is a loss. Some departures are proof that order has been restored. When you step into a new rhythm, the rhythm of healed identity, of honored boundaries, of a presence that no longer asks permission, what no longer fits will naturally reveal itself. I do not need you to argue. I do not need you to explain at length, and I certainly do not need you to prove anything. Order itself is strong enough to sift. Before, each time a relationship fractured, you often blamed yourself. You asked what you had done wrong, what you had failed to say, whether you had loved enough or yielded enough. You became accustomed to carrying responsibility for both sides, because you believed that preserving the relationship mattered more than preserving yourself. I do not deny the sincerity of that heart, but, my beloved child, if you continue to carry that burden into this season, you will constrict the flow I am opening. This season does not ask you to cling, it invites you to observe. Natural separation happens when light increases. Light does not chase away, it simply reveals. When you stop compromising with what makes you smaller, relationships built on one-sided yielding will feel they no longer have a place. When you are no longer willing to carry others' emotions to keep the peace, those accustomed to leaning on your silence will react. Those reactions are not judgments against you, they are information. Information that reveals what the relationship was truly built upon. My beloved child, learn to clearly distinguish between refinement and rejection. Refinement does not come to make you bitter, it comes to make you lighter. When you no longer try to hold on to what no longer belongs to you, you free up energy for what I am bringing. You do not need to close doors with your own hands, you only need to stand in the right place. When you stand rightly, the wrong doors will close on their own, and the right doors will open on their own. I am not in a hurry with this work. because I do not want you carrying the residue of conflict into the new season. In this stage, you may feel sad, a very quiet sadness, not because you regret your decisions, but because you are saying goodbye to old versions of yourself that were tied to those relationships. You once were the one who was always available, always enduring, always standing behind. When you no longer live that way, you will need time to become familiar with the new space that opens up. Allow that sadness to pass through you. It is not a sign of mistake, it is a sign of growth. There is a very subtle temptation you need to watch, for the temptation to go back just to explain things once and for all. You want to be understood correctly, to end things on good terms, to make sure no one thinks badly of you. These desires may sound noble, but often they pull you back into the old cycle, the cycle of placing yourself beneath others so they can feel comfortable. I am not saying that every conversation is unnecessary. I am saying that not every silence is avoidance. Sometimes, silence is the only way to keep the new order from being disturbed. Natural refinement will also touch habits you once thought were harmless, conversations that go on but do not nourish, commitments that drain you, schedules that throw you off rhythm. When you begin to say "not now" to these things, you will find yourself with more space to breathe, to listen, to be fully present where you are. Do not rush to fill that space. That space is grace. It allows me to place the right connections at the right time. I want you to understand that refinement is not a one-time event. It is a process that unfolds layer by layer. Some relationships will leave very clearly. Some will remain but change shape, less close, with fewer expectations, yet healthier. You do not need to classify everything too quickly. You only need to remain faithful to the inner truth, what opens you in peace, and what causes you to contract in tension. Peace is your compass in this season. Do not confuse refinement with isolation. I am not leading you into this season to leave you alone. I am leading you into it so you may be rightly aligned. When relationships that no longer fit quietly move away, the right connections will have room to draw near. But if you cling to everything, there will be no space for the new. I cannot pour new wine into old skins, not because I am withholding, but because I want both to be preserved. In this process, you will learn to trust order rather than fleeting emotion. Some days you will feel relief. Some days you will feel empty. Do not let emotion make your decisions. Let the truth I have placed within you guide you. You have gone far enough to recognize this when you return to what I have already led you out of. Your heart no longer has peace as before. Peace is not merely a feeling, it is confirmation. Something very beautiful happens when you allow refinement to unfold naturally. You begin to attract people who do not require you to sacrifice yourself in order to stay. They do not come to take up space, they come to hold space with you. They do not demand explanations because they respect your rhythm. They do not require you to always be available because they value your presence. Such connections are not loud at the beginning, but they are steady when testing comes. I know there will be moments when you ask yourself, am I becoming too strict? Hear me clearly. You are not being strict. You are being faithful. Faithful to the identity that has been restored. Faithful to the boundaries that have been established. Faithful to a healthy rhythm of life. In being faithful this way, you are not only protecting yourself, you are also protecting relationships from being built on a faulty foundation. Let this refinement unfold in quietness and trust. Do not turn it into a battle. Do not turn it into a verdict. Do not turn it into a story you must justify. Simply keep walking. Keep living rightly. Keep the rhythm. What does not belong to the new season will leave without you pushing it away. And what belongs to you will come without you having to call it by name. When you look back, you will not grieve what was left. You will be grateful that order was restored. You will find yourself lighter, clearer, and more ready for what I am preparing next. For refinement is not the end of a relationship. It is a comma in a new sentence, a story written in truth, respect, and companionship at the right time. My beloved child, after refinement has taken place and what no longer fits has quietly departed, a very different space opens up, a space for rightful unity. This is not a crowded gathering, nor a momentary sense of closeness. The unity I am speaking of is built on maturity, where each person stands firm in their own identity and comes together not out of lack, but out of harmony of purpose. You have been in relationships before where being together meant dissolving yourself, yielding until your voice was lost, carrying portions that were never yours. You called that unity, but in truth, it was dependency dressed up as love. I led you out of those patterns not so you would close your heart, but so you could step into a different kind of unity, one where no one has to become smaller for another to grow. Rightful unity begins with each person having their own footing. You do not enter a relationship to find yourself. You enter because you already know who you are. And when two or more people stand firmly in that way, their connection is not threatened by difference. They do not need to agree on everything to respect one another. They do not need to move in perfect synchrony at all times to walk in the same direction. This kind of unity has elasticity. It allows adjustment without breaking, disagreement without rupture. My beloved child, I want you to recognize a very clear sign of rightful unity. Peace is not something you have to trade away. In these connections, you do not need to rehearse excessively before speaking the truth. You do not have to weigh every word out of fear of offending. You can offer an opinion, ask a question, even express disagreement without worrying that acceptance will be withdrawn. That is because the foundation of this unity is not comfort, but trust. In this season, you will notice that the relationships that remain, the ones that have passed through refinement, begin to carry a different quality. Less noise, yet more depth. Less demand, yet greater endurance. You are no longer required to keep the rhythm for everyone. Each person carries responsibility for their own part. And it is precisely this that creates a very quiet yet very solid collective strength. I do not build connections to impress. I build them to withstand time. Rightful unity also clarifies shared purpose. Not everyone is called to do the same thing, but those who are united will face the same values. Those values may be truth, service, integrity, or the care of life. When values are shared, differing roles no longer create tension. Those at the forefront do not look down on those in the background. Those who speak more do not overshadow those who speak less. Each part is honored because each part is needed. Know this as well: rightful unity does not exclude seasons of silence. There are times when each person must focus on their own assignment, and connection is no longer expressed through frequent contact. This does not weaken unity, it proves maturity. When unity is genuine, distance is not interpreted as a threat. Each person trusts that the bond does not depend on constant proof. Within these unions, you will learn how to handle conflict in a healthy way. Not avoiding it, yet not exploding, not storing it up, yet not exposing it without care. You will discover that disagreement is no longer a sign of danger. It is an opportunity to deepen understanding. And when truth is spoken with respect, the relationship is not damaged, it is refined. You may be surprised to realize that rightful unity does not always come with intense emotion. It does not require constant highs to exist. It is like a foundation rarely noticed, yet supporting everything above it. As you walk within these connections, you will find more strength for difficult days, more joy in ordinary ones, and more wisdom for major decisions. No one carries the load for you, but you are no longer alone. I am teaching you something very important. Protecting unity does not mean preserving surface harmony at all costs. There are moments when protecting unity requires speaking truth, pausing, and adjusting. False peace weakens relationships. Truth, spoken in love, strengthens them. I am not calling you to choose superficial calm. I am calling you to choose lasting stability. In this season, you will see that rightful unity produces something greater than any individual. There are things you cannot do alone, but when you stand with the right people, those things become possible, not because you are stronger, but because unity opens a different kind of strength, the strength of complementarity. What one lacks is supplied by another, not through competition, but through cooperation. Cherish these unions not by clinging to them, but by caring for them. Care through genuine presence. Care by keeping your word. Care by honoring boundaries. Care by praying for one another, even when it is unspoken. When you care this way, the relationship will not run dry. It will deepen with time. I know there is still a part of you that fears loss, that worries if you do not hold tightly. What is good will slip away. Hear me clearly. What is built on the right foundation is not easily lost. It may change form. It may pass through testing, but it does not vanish in the wind. You do not need to grip it with anxiety. You only need to stand firm in truth. Rightful unity is a great gift in this season, because it prepares you for what lies ahead: greater responsibilities, wider influence, harvests that are not only for you. I am not sending you into these things alone. I am placing beside you those who know how to build together, guard together, and stand when the winds are strong. And as you walk with them, you will realize that the journey becomes not only possible, it becomes meaningful. Continue to walk in this unity. Do not return to old patterns out of fear of loneliness. Do not lower your standards out of impatience. The connections that remain have been refined to build something enduring with you. And from that foundation, the next stage will open, not loudly, but surely at the right time, in the right rhythm, and strong enough to carry everything I am preparing to place into your hands. My beloved child, there is a great difference between stepping into something new and being able to remain within it. Many can touch a beginning, but not everyone is steady enough to keep that beginning from being pulled backward by old patterns. That is why, before I open this final chapter for you, I have spent much time resetting the foundation: your memories, your trust, your boundaries, your connections, and the way you stand in your own dignity. For the season you are entering is not a brief taste. It is a season meant to be lived in and sustained. This season is not as loud as you once imagined. It does not begin with cheering crowds or dramatic changes that everyone immediately notices. It begins with a deep stability, a sense that you are no longer yanked backward by the past whenever the future begins to open. You will recognize this not by what happens around you, but by what happens within you. Things that once distracted you no longer hold the same pull. Words that once unsettled you now pass by without taking root, not because you have become cold, but because you have found your center. I call this the final harvest season, not because nothing will follow, but because this is the season in which old cycles come to an end. The survival patterns building only to collapse, standing up only to be exhausted again, no longer have the right to repeat themselves in your life. Not because you are stronger, but because you have learned how to stand in the right place. When you stand rightly, you do not need to exert effort to resist what does not belong to you. It simply passes by. You will notice that what I give you no longer comes to test you. It comes to be used. Before, every opportunity felt like an exam. You feared making mistakes, feared losing it, feared not being enough. Now, you step into the opportunity with calm. You neither rush to grasp it nor hurry to reject it. You observe, you listen, and you act from clarity. This is the sign that you are no longer operating in survival mode, but have entered a posture of mature stewardship. This season is not a reward for having endured long enough. It is the result of allowing me to complete the inner work. If all you needed was a surface-level miracle, I could have given it to you long ago. But I desired to give you a life that would no longer be stolen by even good things. That is why I taught you how to remain in truth when emotions waver. Remain in peace when circumstances are unclear. Remain in my rhythm when the world pushes you to rush. I am not urging you to move faster. I am inviting you to walk steadily. Steady walking is a sign of spiritual health. It shows that you are no longer driven by the fear of missing out. You know that what is meant for you will not pass you by simply because you slowed down to discern. When you are no longer afraid of missing, you begin to choose rightly. In this season, I remove from you a very old burden, the burden of proving yourself. You do not need to prove that you are worthy. You do not need to prove that you have changed. You do not need to prove that you have learned the lesson. What needed to be seen has already been seen in the unseen realm. And when the need to prove disappears, you become light enough to listen, light enough to adjust, light enough to obey without arguing. There will be people who do not understand your new calm. They are used to seeing you anxious, hurried, always ready to carry what others drop. When you no longer operate at that pace, they may say you have changed. Do not be afraid. You have not changed to move away from life. You have changed to remain within it. Not everyone is invited to continue with you in this stage. And that is not a tragedy. It is an order. This final harvest season is also the season in which I entrust you with influence. Not through loud declarations, but through the way you live. You will notice that your steadiness creates a different atmosphere for those around you. When you are no longer panicked, others become less panicked. When you no longer react impulsively, others begin to pause and reflect. This is not showy power. It is quiet authority that flows from being firmly grounded. In this phase, challenges will not disappear completely, but they will come differently. They will not arrive to destroy, but to confirm. They will not come all at once, but layer by layer, enough for you to apply what you have learned. Enough for you to see that you truly have changed. And each time, you will not need to beg for new strength. You will realize that the strength is already there. I did not bring you this far only to pull you back again. I have closed the doors that needed closing. I have silenced the voices that needed silencing. I have clarified the boundaries that needed clarity. What remains now is not your effort, but your faithfulness to the new rhythm. Do not return out of nostalgia. Do not lower your standards out of fear of loneliness. Do not speed up out of impatience. Walk steadily. Remain. Remember, what I give you does not cause you to lose yourself. On the contrary, it allows you to be more fully present in your work, in your family, in your relationships, and even in the most ordinary moments. You are no longer living while waiting for some future day when life will finally begin. You are living now, with quiet gratitude and deep trust. This is the season in which I no longer need to remind you constantly, not because I have withdrawn, but because you have learned to recognize my voice among many others, and when you hear it, you will know when to move forward, when to pause, when to speak, and when to remain silent. This is the mark of true maturity. Step into this season with a quiet heart. No defensiveness, no display, no fear. What has already begun in the unseen is being brought into the light not to impress, but to remain. And you, my beloved child, have been prepared enough that you will not be pulled backward anymore. My beloved child, there is a kind of trial very different from everything you have experienced before. It does not come in a rush to knock you down, nor does it come again and again to wear you away. It comes after you have changed. It arrives like a quiet question directed at the foundation I have built within you. How will you stand when you no longer need to fight just to survive? The final test does not ask whether you are strong. It asks whether you are mature enough to remain. Before, whenever difficulty appeared, you tightened immediately, your mind racing, your heart pounding. Every sense shifting into alert mode. You became accustomed to getting through, pushing until it's over, enduring just a little longer. Those reflexes once helped you survive. But my beloved, if you keep using old reflexes in this season, you will grow weary unnecessarily. The final test is not resolved by strain, it is passed through by steadfastness. Steadfastness does not mean you feel no pressure. Steadfastness means pressure no longer determines your actions. You may feel your heart tremble slightly, but you do not panic. You may see that the situation is unclear, but you do not rush. You may hear many voices, but you do not chase them. This is the sign of an inner life that has been set in order, where peace no longer depends on everything being resolved immediately. I know there is a part of you that still worries if you do not react quickly. Will you lose something? Hear me clearly. What is meant for you in this season cannot be stolen by wise slowness. In the past, you missed many things, not because you were slow, but because you rushed in directions that were not meant for you. Now you are learning to distinguish between true urgency and false urgency, between what requires action and what only requires observation. When you can discern this, you are no longer drawn into battles that are not yours. The final test also touches something very subtle, your quiet confidence. There will be moments when you are tested by familiar doubts, not from outside, but from old memories. Have I really changed? Am I becoming too confident? What if it doesn't work this time either? These questions are not enemies, they are measures. They measure whether you return to the old habit of self-condemnation. And when you choose not to argue with them, not with reasoning, but by remaining, you pass. Remaining is the most powerful act in this season. Remaining in a steady rhythm when everything urges you to speed up. Remaining with truth when emotions want to take the lead. Remaining within boundaries when old habits want to compromise. You do not need to do anything extraordinary, you only need not to return to old ways. And I am with you in every moment of that remaining, without pressure, without withdrawal. In the final test, you no longer seek immediate confirmation. Before, every decision needed a quick sign to reassure you. Now, you can make a decision and let it stand, not out of stubbornness, but because you have listened enough. When you no longer need constant reassurance, you enter a new level of freedom, freedom from instability. And in that freedom, I protect you not by removing all difficulty, but by keeping you from being swept away. The final test does not come to ask whether you are worthy. That question has already been answered. It comes to reinforce what I have done, to let you see with your own eyes that what once broke you now only makes you stand straighter. You will pass through situations that once made you panic, and this time you will be surprised by yourself. You no longer react as you used to. You do not need to defeat anyone. You only need not to lose yourself. And that is true victory. You will see some doors close during this very season. Do not be afraid. They close not because you are wrong, but because you no longer fit what is smaller. Some doors open only when you are willing to shrink yourself. I have not called you back to that. I am preserving you for spaces where you can stand upright and still be welcomed. And if that requires a little more patience, trust that this patience is protecting you. You will not pass the final test by greater effort, but by deeper trust. Trust that is not loud, does not need to prove itself, does not argue. Trust that knows even if the outcome is not yet clear. I am still at work, even if emotions fluctuate. Order does not change, even on weary days. You are not lost. When that trust remains, the test is no longer a wall, it becomes a door. These days, pay attention to very small things, how your breathing slows when unexpected news arrives, how you sleep more peacefully, even without answers, how you choose silence instead of explanation, how you no longer feel the need to tell your story just to be understood. These small things are evidence that you are standing firm, not by strength, but by foundation. I did not place you in the final test to see how much you could endure. I placed you there to confirm that you are ready. Ready for what I am about to entrust to you, not a fleeting moment of brilliance, but a durable life. Ready to carry influence without exhaustion. Ready to receive blessing without losing peace. Ready to remain in the new without being pulled back. Continue to stand in this way. Do not strain. Do not run. Do not turn back. You do not need to make the test disappear. You only need to let it not change your direction. And when you do this, you will step into the final passage, the passage of completion, where what has long been prepared will be placed into your hands, not to test you anymore, but to walk with you for the long journey ahead. My beloved child, there is a very quiet moment that many people do not recognize, the moment of completion. It has no trumpets, no spotlights, no engraved milestones. It arrives when you wake one morning and realize you are living in what you once dared only to pray for. Not because every question has been answered, but because your heart is no longer pulled toward doubt. Completion is not when everything stops, it is when you stop standing and waiting. You have grown accustomed to living in a constant soon. Soon it will be lighter. Soon it will be better. Soon is when it truly begins. But my beloved, I did not create you to live in that endless delay. I led you step by step through healing, reestablishment, filtering, unity, and steadfastness, so that you could enter a different rhythm, the rhythm of full presence. In this rhythm, you no longer count days to escape the present. You live in the present and allow life to unfold. The completion I speak of does not erase all movement. It brings movement into order. You no longer chase the future to escape the present, nor cling to the past to delay your steps. You work, love, and rest not like someone waiting for a miracle, but like someone who has already received. This changes everything: how you make decisions, how you say yes and no, how you view failure and success. No more drama, only truth. There is one thing I want you to remember as you enter this completion: what is promised is not meant to be proven, but to be lived. Before, you may have thought that when the promise arrived, you had to make it impressive, to protect it with double effort. But my promise does not need you to strain to keep it. It needs you to remain in the rhythm that has been set. When you remain, the promise endures on its own. When you try to display it, the promise is drained. You will know you are living in completion when ordinary things become deep. A sufficient meal no longer makes you anxious about tomorrow. A quiet evening no longer feels empty. A small decision no longer triggers a chain of self-blame. You do not need to tell your story to be understood. You also do not need to hide it to be accepted. You rest in your identity, and from there, you are free. Someone may ask you, "So, what now?" You will smile. Because the question no longer unsettles you. Before, you needed a very big plan to feel secure. Now, you have a living compass, truth, peace, and step-by-step guidance. You do not know every turn ahead, but you know you are on the right path, and that is enough. You will begin to live as one who has been entrusted with responsibility, not trusted because you never fail, but because you know how to return when needed, not trusted because you are strong, but because you are faithful. Living this way, you no longer need to defeat anyone. You only need to remain within order. You no longer try to make your life right. You live rightly, and that rightness spreads. In this completion, you will see that your influence no longer comes from many words, but from steady presence. Others feel at ease near you not because you solve every problem, but because you do not turn problems into panic. There will be times when you do not know whom you have helped or what you have changed. Do not try to measure it. Life spreads most quietly when it is not trying to prove itself. Completion does not mean the end of desire. You will still dream, still set goals, still step into new things. The difference is this: you no longer suspend your soul until the goal is reached. You live fully now, and allow new things to unfold in order. Dreams are no longer an escape. They are a place of co-creation in peace. There will be days that are very ordinary. No dramatic signs. Treasure those days. They are proof that the promise has entered life. No longer standing outside the door. Ordinary days are where the promise is used rightly to nourish, to endure, to go far. I did not promise you a string of dazzling days. I gave you a stable life. If you ever ask yourself, is this truly completion? Look at how you respond when difficulty knocks. If you do not panic, if you do not return to self-condemnation, if you do not abandon boundaries just to feel temporary relief, then you are already there. Completion does not need to be named. It is recognized by how you remain. Remember this so your heart stays light. Completion does not end the journey. It changes the rhythm of the journey. From seeking to caring, from asking to stewarding, from waiting to living. When you walk in this rhythm, you will notice that I speak less, yet feel closer. Not because I have withdrawn, but because you have learned to hear in stillness. My beloved child, live the coming days as one who has been placed in the right position. No need to display, no need to defend, no need to doubt. When something comes, receive it with discernment. When something leaves, release it with peace. When something is unclear, remain. And in all of this, you will discover a truth that is simple yet powerful. The promise has become life. I complete what I begin, not with a dramatic period, but with a long, steady breath of life put back into order. You do not need to search further to become someone else. You are already the one I formed, strong enough to go far, gentle enough to love, calm enough to remain. Live this way, and as you live, you will see what was once a promise now walks with you each day quietly, faithfully, and enduringly. Thank you for listening to today's message. Please subscribe and turn on notifications so we can continue to receive the living word together. Build a steadfast faith and walk in the boundless love of God. Amen.